I always love a good comeback story from the games industry because I'm sick and tired of the fire and forget mindset that a lot of companies stubbornly still have. You spend years and years working on a game with dozens and dozens of people, and then everything needs to be decided in the first weekend of sales or the first year, and it's crazy. Darktide from Fatshark is a very good example of what can happen if you really believe in the game that you're making and you stick around long enough to make things happen. Hey guys, it's Harry. I've been a game designer and producer for the past 10 years, and in this video we're talking about Darktide and how Fatshark is bringing it back from the dead. So hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and let's dive right into it. In the first year after release, Darktide didn't resonate quite so well as its predecessor, Vermintide 2. Apparently a lot of people were expecting the same level of polish and the number of features that Vermintide 2 had. But the part that they missed is that Vermintide had been around for 5 years already, while Darktide was brand new, so it didn't have a lot of the features and content that its predecessor already gained over the years. There's two parts of the game as a service model. One is what we usually associate negatively, with a lot of aggressive practices and microtransactions and loot boxes and whatnot, some lousy in-game events just to serve as a cash grab, and a whole set of practices mostly popularized by mobile games in the last 10 years or so. But there's another side to the games as a service. It's about continuously listening to your player base, how they interact with your game, where they struggle the most, what they like or dislike, how they talk on social media about the game. All of that becomes data for the game developers. Something called analytics, or the science of collecting gameplay data to transform that into actionable improvements one way or another for the game. And Fatshark has done a tremendous job in assessing analytics, responding to player feedback, and approaching the community when the game faced some controversial elements upon release that results in some mixed reviews on Steam, for example. And we see that all the time in the games industry, but to various effects. Frost Giant is trying to do the same with their RTS Stormgate, but they haven't reached that level of traction just yet. Darktide, on the other hand, with its $60 million revenue in its first month, is doing a great job in overhauling the game mechanics, the narrative systems, and just making sure that they are addressing player feedback and making the game better and better. And it takes the whole knowledge that you have about your own game to correctly parse player feedback and what they want out of a game. Because many times what players say they want from a game is not exactly what they need to see. It's the game designers and developers' job to interpret that sentiment from players and know what specific elements in the game need to change or be removed or added in order to correctly respond to that. And that's a craft, right? That comes with time and experience. And Darktide is great. Fatshark, a game studio founded in 2007, already had a quite successful journey releasing the previous Vermintide 1 and 2 games, which followed the same recipe, taking a whole bunch of inspiration and then some more from the Left 4 Dead games, which is something that the developers will be the first to admit. And let's be frank, that is totally fine. It is a remarkable phenomenon in the games industry how some games will be so successful and appealing with their premise and core mechanics that other games are born from it, creating entire subgenres. That's why we have MOBAs and Battle Royales and Souls-like games. They are all subgenres sprung from highly successful games like Dota, PUBG, and Demon's Souls. So Darktide took the best learnings from Vermintide and applied it all. Or almost. At first the game had a weaker progression system, for example, when compared to Vermintide, and oh boy did the players compare them. The community was quick to point out several weak spots in the game, and that turned on Fatshark's alarm, which quickly canceled some of the other planned content and decided to go back to the drawing board and focus on improving the core mechanics of the game. They knew that if they didn't, the game would probably not have a future at all. And that's one of the game developers' hardest and more crucial jobs in the market. Learning when to pivot their games to adapt to player expectations while keeping the vision of the game mostly intact, not losing their souls and authenticity just to blindly implement every whimsical request players bring to them, but to take that and use it to improve what the game's supposed to be. Game development will always be a mix of a strong game direction or getting to the vision that the designers have for the game and playtest, which means like responding to feedback from players and testing the game over and over to improve it as the development goes. But it's a worthy reminder that Vermintide 2 had 5 years into existence by the time Darktide was released, and that meant a lot of changes, DLCs, and improvements onto the base game. So expecting the same level of polish from a game on its first day in the market is not something realistic. It is important for the players and communities to remember that these days, almost all games evolve over time, and the best games get there by listening to the community and improving the game based from that. It is something to be expected, in my opinion, a healthy part of the modern games industry. If developers have to hit the mark on day one simply to break even and have any chances of long-term success, that's madness. This is especially true for games that intend to provide tons of extra content via DLCs or live ops over the years, but it can be true to any single game. We have a much more sane production process if developers are allowed to not release perfect games, which is impossible by the way, but somehow it continues to be a good part of the expectation from players. And much of that is from the fact that on Steam, or PlayStation Store or any other, a AAA game with hundreds of millions of dollars in budget lives side by side with another game that has but a fraction of it. On the left, you have your favorite AAA shooter coming from a publisher that has an endless supply of money and access to billionaire investors. And on the right, you have an indie game made by 3 friends in 1 year as a side project during the weekends. But it's much easier these days for a game to look good and realistic, with game engines like Unity or Unreal providing such powerful tools that are very accessible. Than to you just chilling and browsing the store. Both games look similar, and you expect the same level of quality and depth from both, which is hardly the case, and most developers struggle to keep up with the quality bar, especially upon release. Developers should be allowed to make mistakes, given that they are willing and capable of improving the game over time and overcoming them. And Fatshark has done just that. And drawing from the lore-rich universe of Warhammer has a lot to add to the game. The more that I learn about Warhammer, the tabletop game, the story, the factions, the better it gets. Warhammer has so much flexibility to give to most diverse video games, from turn-based tactics like Battle Sector, a narrative-heavy RPG like Rogue Trader, to your quick and dirty, action-packed Space Marine 2. And Darktide does a marvelous job creating a gloomy atmosphere and landscape in which the game narrative takes place. The Hive Worlds, one of the various types of planets present in the Warhammer 40,000 universe, give the level designers so much to explore in terms of maps and labyrinths and dungeons for Darktide's missions. And the environment design is wonderful, packed with detailed structures that convey the sheer scale and grandeur that a Warhammer game demands. And all of that while letting you choose from different character classes that play out very differently, with unique progression and abilities and a customization system linked to the game's monetization. There are ways and ways of doing games as a service. I've played many games that I was happy to purchase more content, be it DLCs or cosmetics or anything, because the game knew how the player felt and what to offer for the player as a good value. I don't think there's a right or wrong way of doing that. I think that is a matter of respecting the player's time and money, connecting with the player to know what they want from a game, to know what extra content they'll be happy to have and to pay for. Naturally, game studios are companies, games are products, and we all need money in this so perfect capitalist world. But that doesn't have to be detrimental for the game. I mean, I'm happy to pay for good clothes or a tasty meal, so I can also gladly pay for a game that will provide me countless hours of entertainment and memorable moments with my friends. Because it would be so much easier in a sense to either create a cash grab game with not a single thought of concern for actual players, or the perfect emotional gem out of developer's heart with no commercial intentions, but just for the pure expression of the art. But it's much harder to create a game that excels in creativity, innovation, and fun mechanics, while also establishing a healthy and sustainable monetization driver for the studio. That is an art form in and of itself, a smooth blend of technical prowess, joyful creativity, and business savvy. That to me is the apex of game development. Create a game that thousands or millions of players can enjoy and escape from reality with a lot of technical innovation and cool stuff, and also generating a lot of revenue so that developers can be paid for and continue to create their games for years and decades. That is mwah. But of course, developers and players need to be connected for that to happen. And that connection only comes via playtesting, social media interaction, analytics, and other forms of communication between both. That is why players are usually more willing to pay for content made by developers that they already follow, they admire, and trust. Trust is a key word in community building and one of the most invaluable assets for any game studio. And that's a very easy thing to damage or lose, especially in these crazy days of the internet, social media, and review bombs. But as I said in the beginning, I love to see those comeback stories that come from developers who believe in their games and put in the work to improve the quality of what they produce. It is great to see when that pays off, and hopefully it is paying off for Fatshark. And I think there's a lot of important lessons for game developers and also for players in that story. But what do you think? Should games be those perfect gems out of the box? Or should players and developers build the games together over time with trial and error and improvement? Leave in the comments below and let's discuss. That's it for now, guys. Thank you so much for watching the video. Hit the like button and subscribe. I'm trying to do more content like this. So also leave in the comments what other games or kinds of content do you want to see here in the channel. Alright, see you guys next time.